Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm your host, Sarah Bagby, and I am joined by Kelly and John. How are all of you today?
Good, thank you.
Good. I also want to point out, well, John, I should make sure you're doing okay. How are you? Oh, is it possible, John, that you muted your phone?
There we go.
There we go. Okay. See, I'm glad I asked. So you're doing okay, John?
I am. Thank you very much.
Okay. Glad to hear it. I want to let everyone know also that that chat box right beneath us here is where you can ask your questions, so feel free to type them in. And it may not be available throughout the entire presentation, but if you click the raise your hand button, I'll make sure it's available to you. So with that being said, Kelly and John, why don't I disappear and you tell us why we're all here today and just get right into it.
Okay, well, thanks Blue Volt for hosting me here today and with Kelly as we present how to build a channel certification program. And we'll take just a second and take a step back so we could take a step forward. That's who we are, and we'll get going. But wanted to, before we started off today, just take a step back and talk about 20 years ago, or 19 years ago, I got out of grad school, and I had a degree in instructional technology, and the very first job I landed was with a marketing communications company. And this marketing communications company focused on helping large technology and telecommunication organizations market their products and services. And they brought me into the organization to help develop e-learning so that they could offer a broader suite of products to these clients. And the clients were like organizations like AT&T and US West and Unisys and Compaq. But when they brought us in for e-learning, they weren't bringing us in for e-learning for their internal employees. It was for their channel, because almost 20 years ago they realized that the channel was the key and lifeblood to their organization, and the better and smarter their channel was on their products and services, the better opportunity they had to succeed as an organization. So extended enterprise learning, or channel learning, was around all those years ago. So it was wonderful to work on those projects because they were always highly funded, and we could do some really engaging, interesting things because the upside was measurable and they would know the impact. And we'll talk about the impact today and how that became measurable. Well, in the end, I ended up spending 13 years working for Tier 1 learning management system providers. And instead of focusing on internal employee LMSs, I focused exclusively on extended enterprise, channel, and customer learning initiatives, and tried to become an expert over that 13-year horizon. Except there was never any place to go inside the industry where you could get the definitive word on channel learning or extended enterprise in general. So this year, I hung up the sales shoes and founded Talented Learning to be that place to go. All we do is research extended enterprise technology such as channel learning and certification, and we write weekly blogs, and we have weekly webinars where we share our findings to anybody that's interested free of charge. So that's who Talented Learning is. We're independent consultants that help organizations buy and select learning management systems to support their extended enterprise. So we'll talk about channel certification today, what that is, how that's different than just regular training. But we're going to get to the crux of things. We're going to talk about the business impact of certification and why organizations do it, and what is the measurable return on results that they're going to see. And then I'll hand it over to Kelly, who will actually take us in. Kelly is a channel enthusiast or channel learning enthusiast like myself, and she's going to take you through 3 case studies of organizations that are educating and certifying their channel and showing what the results that they've achieved inside of their businesses. And then we'll get down to brass tacks on how to actually launch your own channel certification program. We'll tell you what's needed. We'll dig into the technology and the features and functions just a little bit so that you have a good understanding of what to look for inside the industry. And we'll even give you some tips and best practices on building a measurable business case. So all of that in an hour and with some time left over for questions. So we better get going, as this will be fast-paced and info-packed here today. So that's how we're going to go through today. So a channel by any other name. So who is your channel? What is a channel? A channel is the distribution arm of your organization. They're the people that are your lifeblood. They represent your brand. They sell your products. But there's only one challenge, and that is they're not your employees. You have an internal channel, your sales your sales force or your sales team, but your external channel are always partners that to some degree are voluntary users of, voluntary learners of any of the content that you put out and of being a partner in your channel. And they go by a lot of different names: dealers, resellers, wholesalers, manufacturing representative, distributors, franchises, agents, retailers, just to name a few, who are the names of external channels. And channels, because they're external and they're not your employees, there's an element of voluntary, always an element of voluntary in dealing with them, and it makes it significant. We'll touch back on that here in a little bit on the features and functions of training your channel from a technology perspective. You have to overcome that voluntary and make it an engaging process. So we'll talk about that here as we continue on today. So what is channel certification? Well, channel certification is the process of providing training to your external sales and distribution channel or channels, and then testing, and then doing knowledge assessments so that you're actually measuring that the learning took place. So that implies that you're creating learning objectives. You know exactly what the piece of content or program of study of content is supposed to teach from a sales or from a product knowledge standpoint, and then you assess that and prove that they own it. When you prove that your channel learners have learned something, then that is the beginning of being able to prove your value to the organization and how you're impacting the organization. And we'll show you how to do that here in just a little bit. But the content that you can provide, the certification material, can be any form. It can be like what we're doing today with virtual classrooms and having webinars. It could be from instructor-led training. It could be passing out manuals. It could be, or downloading manuals rather, or watching video or audio or self-paced learning events. All these things are e-learning. All these things are ways that are content that you can put out to your users and then wrap an assessment around them to ensure that knowledge retention. But the idea is to focus it on the product, the features, and how to sell them better. Because at the end of the day, your channel may be representing other organizations, other parallel organizations. If you go to a retailer at Best Buy, they have computer manufacturers from everywhere. They have the phones from Android and Apple and BlackBerry. And so one store is distributing the products of competitors. So whatever competitor educates the best gets the mind share of the person that's in the heat of the sale. And that is the crux of channel certification. And by doing that, of getting that mind share and increasing the sale of your computers versus somebody else's, or your tools versus somebody else's, impacts the business. And you can measure that. And you can look to see who has or who hasn't taken training and certification and how well they're performing to start the beginning of your business case and the continuation of your business case. So a lot of people confuse training with certification, thinking it's the same thing, but it's not. Training doesn't need a learning management system, and it doesn't need to be tracked. It could be a website, it could be a portal, it could be CD-ROMs that are sent out. Typically, it's self-service, meaning that if you want to take or consume that training or knowledge, it's up to the individual person, but there's not prescribed programs of study. It's generally unmeasurable. The information, it's better than doing nothing, certainly, but it is information that is unmeasurable. But certification, on the other hand, needs a learning management system as a backbone. The learning management system keeps track of all the content and all the users and the relationship between the two. And because there is that ongoing relationship and documentation or recording of that relationship in the sense of starting content, finishing content, passing tests, you have lots of data about that particular user, that learner, that builds over time. And so the learning management system houses the e-learning and the multimedia content elements I described previously. It puts them together in prescriptive paths because not all your channel learners are equal. Some channel partners sell a broader or a narrower range of products and services. Inside a channel partner, there's executives, there's managers, there's salespeople, there's service and maintenance, and all of them represent your brand to some degree, but require different flavors of the same knowledge. So to have prescriptive learning paths so that you're certifying the different types of users and the knowledge that they require to do their job better and represent your products and brand better. And all of that is always wrapped with the knowledge assessments, and the crux of it all is that it impacts the business. We can see, and organizations can see, the direct correlation between training more, certifying at different levels, and exactly how that impacts their business. And so certification of your channel turns out to be more of a business than a training function if it's done right. So let's take a step back here and take a look at who is here with us today from a channel certification standpoint. So Sarah, could you pull up poll number 1, please?
Yeah, let me bring that over here. Here it is for everyone to actually participate. So go ahead and click on which the best describes your organization's training efforts. Everyone should be able to click on it. There we go. See, people are starting to do it. We're getting a lot of mix here. There you go. We're pretty evenly spaced here, John.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Keep on clicking as you're voting here. But we don't provide training to our channel, and certainly, we see a lot of that it's the channel is up to themselves inside the organization. But most organizations that I see have, and in our poll too, are at the 50% level, provide that training, but they're not doing detailed tracking and analysis of it. Now, is that good? Sure, that's great because you're providing that training. But the challenge is that it's like pushing a rock uphill. You're always in the process of trying to get budget or obtain budget or get more budget, because unless you measure the impact, you're always viewed as a cost center versus a profit center. But the minute that you start certifying and measuring the impact, you can start that transition from being a cost center to a profit center, and then you have a seat at the table because you're a part of the strategic plan of the organization versus just something that has to be endured. And some people are using their internal LMS. We're going to speak specifically on that here about whether you can use your LMS, your internal LMS for your channel also, which is actually an interesting topic. So great. Can we close that up and we'll continue to move on here? Thanks everybody for participating. All right. So why is everybody certifying, or why are organizations moving towards the certification of their channel? There has to be a reason, or you wouldn't do it. Like internal employee training, the reason is cost avoidance. It's adherence to compliance. It's how can you save money. But with channel certification, the very first thing that you have to think about that's different than internal employees is it's about making money. It's about increasing partners' sales, channel partner sales, getting that mind share I was describing, and increasing their performance because they're better knowledgeable. But it's also about creating a new stream of revenue from the sale of content. Now you may be thinking, well, geez, how can you sell content to your channel partners? Aren't they voluntary, or don't they just expect that to be part of their process? But we see progressive organizations putting a fee on different levels of certification. Bronze, silver, and gold certification, for example, would mean more comprehensive training events for more of their people, or a higher percentage of a channel partner's employees. But all those things have a fee associated with them. And so effective organizations are using channel learning to generate revenue to help fund them to grow bigger and to have more of an impact. And it's a perpetuating good cycle of making money. And if you're stuck in internal employee training, you just never get around to making money. You're always a cost center, and so you're always fighting for your existence and trying to prove your existence. Channel learning is so much more fun because you can prove it and it's impactful to the business. But it's also about saving money, just like it is with internal employees, that if you develop content once, you can deploy it many times over the years and continue to lower your cost each time somebody takes that content, because it never costs more to develop it. You get to standardize your instructional design and continue to evaluate and improve to make the content more effective to drive the behavior that you're trying to change. It allows you to go into global areas that you wouldn't have the opportunity to go into if you had to put somebody on a plane or maintain a training organization that had trainers flying all over the world. It's just not scalable or practical or affordable to be able to do that. So channel certification will allow you to become more effective in reaching your channel and do that in a lower cost. And the last reason why organizations do this is to shorten cycle times. That's kind of a weird way of phrasing it, but that's the term we use in the industry of shortening the cycle time. And what that means is the time it takes to do anything. For example, if you're a franchise or a restaurant franchise and you're bringing on new restaurants, the time to bring on a new restaurant, to identify the employees that you want, to hire them, to train them, to get them to represent your brand in the way that consistent way that you want to represent takes a certain amount of time. If you can shave that from 6 months to 2 months or from 2 months to 2 weeks, those things have a profound impact on the business and the bottom line of a business. But it's also on a more smaller scale and a practical basis, it's the cycle time to roll out new products and services. Everybody is, no matter what industry you're in, the products and services that you make, unless you're extremely lucky, and even that's only short-lived, whatever you make, you have competition. You have higher price competition, lower price competition, complementary products, products that do what you do but maybe a little bit different. So everybody has that challenge of trying to differentiate in the marketplace. So your amount of time to roll out a new product, the window that you may have that competitive differentiation is limited. So organizations use this as a way to maximize how fast they can roll to market, and they may be able to get an extra 2 or 3 months before the competition can take that leapfrog step to catch up. And all of that has a drastic impact. And if an organization that delivers channel learning measures these 3 things, then they have the ability to look in these 3 different buckets for the value that they're bringing to the organization. And that'll allow you to really improve both your political positioning and also just overall performance of your organization. So all that's nice talk, but the proof is in the pudding, so they say. And so we'll get to Kelly here in just 1 second as we talk about this, because this is the last piece here. I thought it was Kelly next year, so one more slide. There's 3 types of channels. And this is important as you get into what kind of learning management system you would need to certify your channel, because there's the internal channel, as we talked about. There's the captured channel. And what that means is they act a lot like your employees. That would be like McDonald's franchises. No matter where you go, the McDonald's employees still wear the same uniforms. You can still buy the same food there, and they're not selling Burger King's or Kentucky Fried Chicken products on their facilities. So even though they're not your employees, they still kind of act like your employees. But the group that's contains the most opportunity and the most heartburn is the uncaptured channel. They're the ones that are either voluntary selling your products and have lots and lots of products on their mind and not enough time to learn and to memorize all of them. And so impacting that group is the most impactful or the most business impactful. And you'll see here in the upcoming stories that it's looking at it from both standpoints of if you can look at it from your internal sales and the content that they need and try to leverage that across the other groups. But they are different because the channel partners, because they're voluntary users, they must value the content. They have to purchase the content. They've got multiple sources of content asking for their time or for their mind share. They have unknown access points. So channel partners are coming in from mobile devices and from all over the world in unpredictable times because they are voluntary users and they're squeezing it in when they can. And that's different than employee users that access through a single sign-on. They go only to their corporate LMS for all of their content. They take content because they've been assigned and it's required and content is due. And so employee learners, you have a whole element of just compelling them to do what you want to drive behavior, and that's a smart thing to do inside your organization. But you can't take that approach with your external channel. With your external channel, it's all voluntary, and it's all to encourage them to come, consume the content, spend money, and return and do it all over again. And so successful organizations that roll out channel learning programs weigh both of these equally, and you have to use different techniques, and they do use different techniques. The smartest ones can figure out how to do it in their existing LMS to leverage economies of scale, but not all organizations can. And so now we can get down to, there's actually 2 slides later than I thought, we can get down to the case studies. And I'll hand it over here to Kelly to share some of the history that she's been.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, John. Now stay nearby because we do have some questions that are going to come in. I just know it. I want to let everyone know the chat box is there, but then again, we will make sure that we take time at the end of this to answer any questions that might come in. So Kelly, if you want, go ahead and click on your little camera icon. It's tapped there. John, I'm going to turn off your camera, but only for a minute, so stay nearby, okay?
Okay.
All right, Kelly, you're on your own.
All right, great. Thanks so much. John, that was a really great segue into some of the case studies that I want to share with you today. The first one is for Industrial Buyers Consortium, IBC. So they are a buying and marketing group, and they work with independent distributors who are their members and preferred suppliers or manufacturers, and they really focus on the industrial and construction spaces. So one of the business challenges for any types of buying groups or marketing groups is to constantly provide value to their distributor members and also create what we call this idea of shared prosperity. Because we know that when manufacturers and distributors are aligned, they tend to work best and everybody wins. And so in order to continually show value and ROI to both their members as well as their preferred suppliers, IBC decided to go with IBC University, which is an online university, and for them what they do is they take their preferred suppliers' product content and product knowledge, put it up on the website for their distributor members to take. And so what they did was really, really interesting because, we're always trying to prove ROI and the ROI of training as it relates to sales. And so they actually took a snapshot of one of their distributors' sales of a particular supplier's product. And they looked at what the percentage of growth was for that particular product. And they noticed that the distributor was able to increase their sales for that particular product on their own 86% in Q2 through a concerted effort that they had created. But after the supplier put their product courses online and the distributors took those courses, what they saw was an increase of purchases of that particular product in Q2 and Q3 by 476%. And I would bet there's many of you out there that are saying, no way, that's impossible, that's way too big of an increase. So IBC actually went back to the supplier and validated that indeed they had ordered, in this case it was 5 cases of product. The distributor continues to move that product. And so again, here we're back now, as John pointed out, we're moving from the cost center idea to this is clearly a profit center. And what's nice about this is just one isolated example. IBC continues to take those measurements and gauge the profitability of taking online courses and increased product sales. And they're continuing to see that same trend. So I thought that was a great story.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So the next case study is for a manufacturer, and they're one of the leading manufacturers in the HVAC space. So they're coming up with really forward-thinking, cutting-edge products that speak to the marketplace in a very unique way. And one of their challenges was there are some new code requirements, and because of those code requirements, they were able to develop a new type of fan, and it was called the Broan Ultra. And one of the things that was really interesting about this fan is that not only was it new to the market, it was new technology, but they had a very fast production time and a quick turnaround time to get it to market. And for anyone who, is in this business, you know that the typical training model when new products come out is you have either your manufacturer's rep or your salesperson driving around to all your distributor locations. Maybe they've got a sample rolling around in the back of their trunk, and they're really hoping to get to everyone to do lunch and learns, and kind of hoping that they can reach everyone in their audience in a cost-effective way and get a message that they know and have validated their learners understand. So instead of spending the money and not getting the results that they've been looking for, what they did was they leveraged a webinar program. And this is a really great example of using something like a webinar, the platform we're using today, as a rapid content development tool. So if you're concerned about not having content or online courses, this is a great way to get your content out there. And they used 12 webcasts over 9 days. And because their channel with over 1,800 people had received the message, they were ready to sell the product. When the product went to market, Broan actually was able to command a sold-out #1 position, which was the first time that they'd been able to do that in their history because they had trained their channel and everybody was ready and there was such a high demand for their product. And as a result, their sales were exponentially more profitable because they decreased the lag time to market and they increased their profitability from the additional sales. And then the last case study I wanted to present is IDC. And so they're similar to our associations in that they are a co-op, and they also work with both distributors and suppliers in the MRO and power transmission space. So their particular challenge was helping independent distributors remain competitive. One of the things we know about distribution right now is it's really this changing landscape, right? We have these mega distributors coming on board. We have folks like Fastenal, Grainger, Alibaba is a new one to the space. Even Amazon's looking to make a play in the distribution space. And customers and consumers, by the same token, have more of an expectation of things like e-commerce. And so for the independent local distributor, being able to remain competitive is a huge challenge. And so that's where IDC comes into play to help sort of aggregate resources and assist them with that remaining competitive and relevant. And so what they did was they created IDC University, and they noticed that over time, suppliers experienced a very consistent 23% increase in sales. And that was just during the first 6 months. And they've continued to measure that growth. And they're now looking at between 30 and 50% growth in products that their distributors have been trained on. And they continue to grow and have that shared prosperity as a result of online training. So again, just kind of speaking to John's points about moving from a cost center to a profit center, it's these types of measurements that are going to elevate your training program within your organization and provide you with the justification that you need to put the resources in place to really build out that certification program. So those are the 3 that I had. Sarah, did you have some additional questions or polls that you might want to introduce at this point?
Yeah, actually, there was one poll that we had made for, I think now would be the perfect time to bring it over. It is, what is your favorite case study? So I'm going to bring it over for everyone. Go ahead and just click on whichever one you think matches up to you, case study 1, 2, or 3. And John, if you want to come on camera as well, I know you have a few more slides, and then and we'll have Kelly stick around for questions that'll be coming up in just a few minutes as well. John, in order for you to turn your camera on, there's a little icon above the slides. You should be able to do it there, but let me know if you have any problems. So it looks like we have quite a few people liking case study 3.
Yeah.
But a good mix there.
Oh, yeah.
And John, you may be muted as well. Are you having any problems turning on your camera?
Yeah, no, I can't find it. I don't see the button.
Oh, okay. Well, all you have to do is you'll see at the very top you have the little guy raising their hand.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a little telephone icon. Do you see those little icons?
Yes.
Okay. In between those two is like a little camera one. It's a little tricky. Okay, you got it.
There we
There you
go.
go.
All right. I'm going to disappear. I'm going to leave the polls up here for you. You guys talk about them, but I'll make them disappear when you say so.
Okay, so case study number one was IBC, a mere 473% increase in sales. Still only got 33%. What a tough crowd here. Number two was Broan NuTone with their new fan. They were able to go to that sold out status. That one only commanded 14.2%, but the winner is IDC with a solid and demonstrable 23% increase on trained partners. So all of those are just fantastic stories and examples of channel learning in action and the power of measuring the results and how that impacts the channel. You can just imagine that at those organizations, nobody's snickering about training. That kind of performance enhancement makes training revered inside the organization. And I don't know about you, but I like the revered status better than the snicker status.
Well, and John, there's a number of other anecdotal stories that we can share as well, either now or at another time, but there's companies that I work with now, a manufacturer in particular, who's doing a certification program, and it's actually called a Brand Champions program. And what they're doing is they're actually engaging some of their key distributors to become the brand champion of their products. And there's a number of responsibilities included in that, but that also includes higher rebates and product sales. So there's just a number of ways that you can use a training program above and beyond what we've talked about today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great stuff. Great stuff. All right, well, let's get moving. Can we take that poll down, or I just click? There we go. Okay, so now you're convinced. Channel learning seems like a great idea. You should certify your channel. People are making 473% increase in sales. I mean, why would you not do that? So what do you need to do to get going? What are the steps to channel certification to go from nowhere to enjoying those type of benefits? And number one thing, there's really only three things you have to do, and it's not a teeny three things, but it's not an impossible. In fact, it's not even an expensive. It is just three steps that you have to follow. And number one is you start to assemble your sales and marketing content. So as Kelly described, the virtual classrooms there in that first example, virtual classrooms are a rapid content development tool, allowing you to take PowerPoints and things like today and just very quickly prepare a presentation and record that and have that for all time. And so you have to start assembling this content, whether it exists now or you have to create it. But what you'll find is that the sales content for your internal salespeople, the same content that they need is leverageable. And so to start thinking right from as you're releasing or you're developing your products to insert training and development at that stage of the process so that you can start to influence the content so that it's good for all of those groups, your internal, your external, and your captured channel. So assemble all that content in any medium. Step number two is to deploy a learning management system. If you have a learning management system internally, then you're in good shape. Figure out whether or not it can support your channel. And we'll get into just a second here what the learning management system needs to support your channel. But looking at your internal LMS is a great place to start because there's economies of scale of just jumping on that system if it's suitable from a licensing and a cost and a contract and a speed standpoint than it is to run a whole new LMS selection. But you do need some sort of learning management system to deploy your content, your sales content, and right from day one, and not day two, literally day one, it has to be about developing that business case. So those organizations, IBC, Broan, IDC, they are measuring right from the get-go. And if you waste time and you think that it's too hard or you don't want to take that time to find out the business metrics that are being impacted, then it'll be challenging for you to grow the solution. And so all three need to happen before that first piece of content goes, because then what you can do is you can measure the results. You predict the results of your business case, and then you can measure the actual results. And what you'll find is that sometimes you do better than you think, and sometimes you do worse. And once you identify what are those causes that make you do better or worse, you can continue to refine your system and your content for your next product launches and continue to improve the process and improve your impact on the organization. So let's go through these real quickly. So assemble the sales and marketing content. So we talked about it. Everything that you can get. Virtual classrooms are one of the easiest. But then you have to take that next step and create assessments. And create assessments can be pretty easy. It could be multiple choice questions or true-false questions. But essentially, if you know the features and the benefits and how to sell your product, for example, then it's pretty easy to create questions that drive that behavior or drive the demonstration of that behavior or of that knowledge by asking the appropriate questions, or how to sell questions, or follow-up questions, or discovery questions, so that these salespeople, channel salespeople, can sell better. But it's all about, you don't need leadership content, you don't need IT content, you don't need any silly content. All you need is sales and marketing content, because that's what we're trying to change. Invest in an authoring tool, allow you to create those assessments even in a more dynamic way, though you don't have to. So, can I use my employees channel for my LMS? And yes, you can sometimes, but it's only if it has the needed features and politically if you're allowed. So many organizations, I run into organizations all the time where it's just too much of an uphill battle to try to gain space on your LMS and to open up a domain and to have administrative rights, because you're always going to use it differently for your channel than you would for your internal employees. So you break all the existing processes and workflows that exist inside an organization for using that LMS. So unless you are internal learning and development and you choose to use it for extended enterprise, it tends to be a real challenge for organizations to play nicely, believe it or not. It's also, is it affordable? Internal LMSs for years and years have gone by a per user, really a per employee cost for the license. But with your channel, it's different. You have a higher number of users in most cases, but they're infrequent users or sporadic users, and it's unpredictable how they're actually going to use the system, and they really don't get the same day-to-day use out of it that an internal employee. So it needs to be charged differently. It needs to be licensed differently and affordably to make it usable. And so depending on who your internal LMS is and the focus of that company being more internally focused versus channel or extended enterprise focus, you may find that it becomes prohibitive from a cost standpoint to use your channel LMS. And is there the ability to share content? And we talked before about the internal employee content, because if you can share content, then you can develop once and save that cost for your extended enterprise. But if you can't share content for one reason, then it's another reason to think, well, maybe you should just get a rogue or a standalone extended enterprise or channel learning management system, because that's probably one of the biggest benefits, is to be able to leverage that content. And if you can't, or you have to create your own content, then maybe you want to look elsewhere. And finally, is it secure enough? And typically the answer to that would be yes, unless it's a homegrown learning management system that's just meant to be on internal servers and not being accessed from the rest of the world. So it can have pretty serious implications if your vendor's not hosting it in most cases. So can you use your employee LMS for your channel? Maybe. If you ask these questions and determine the answer to this, that'll put you a long way to knowing. But once again, what I need to engage voluntary learners, and why would that be different than internal employees? And so what I did here, what we did, is we categorized the top 10 features that a learning management system needs to have to support voluntary users of the channel. Now, learning management systems all do certain things. They host content and they keep track of users, and you can get reports out of them, and most of them will manage e-learning, and a lot of them will manage instructor-led training, and all of them are SCORM and most likely AICC, and now even soon to be Tin Can compliant. So these are all the things that every LMS can do. There's 600 LMSs out in the world, and so there's certain things that all of them can do, but it's these 10 features that they need to do differently that is important. And number one, it needs to be easy to use. And how do you describe easy to use? Well, my mom is 75 from Germany. She came over here when she was just a kid. She didn't touch technology in her whole life, and when she was 72, kids bought her an iPad, and she flashes around with her swiping finger in Facebook and in Amazon and buying books and liking stuff and commenting and doing all these things, and nobody taught her how. That's easy to use. That's what easy to use is defined. And so standard enterprise LMSs have to be the exact same way. They have to look more like Amazon and Facebook and eBay and look a lot less like a database or a spreadsheet. They got to have features that are much more engaging to a marketing standpoint than just learning. Well, what's marketing? That's exactly that. It's banners driving them to content, to purchase, advanced certifications, all the things that are trying to drive behavior just like they do. Users that consume this course also would looked at this course or took this course, or here let's read about the 5-star ratings or the comments or the reviews of this particular course. Those are all marketing features that traditional LMSs don't have. But it's got to be easy, it's got to be fast, or they won't come back. And no training required. They won't take training to take training, that's for sure. Number 9, it's got to be cloud-based. If you're going to support your channel, unless you have an LMS and an IT department that's right in your back pocket and they want to come along with you and do anything that you say and get this channel learning project prioritized for you and you're always their top priority, those things never happen, by the way. But if they did, then you might want to go with your own LMS deployed locally. But otherwise, you need to go with a cloud-based LMS. Why? Because it's fast, it's easy, it's secure, it's easy to set up, it's easy to start small, it doesn't require a large investment. And so cloud-based LMSs are an easy way to get into the channel certification and channel learning program without dropping a ton of money. And this is probably one of the key things that's different than if you were investigating this 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Only organizations that had the biggest channels and the big telecom and software and high-tech companies that I was describing earlier could afford to drop $250,000 or $500,000. But the cloud-based LMSs have turned that all on its ear and have introduced monthly pricing or as-you-go pricing that's at a nominal, affordable level. And so now price is no longer a reason not to get into the channel learning with cloud-based LMSs. It's got to have API integration. So it's got to integrate into everything. Everything you say, everything I say, it has to integrate into the ecosystem of an organization because the LMS is most likely not going to be the final destination or not the only final destination. Information from the LMS could be in the learner portal, could be in the product itself, the software product, accessing learning modules or video tutorials that are being stored, the consumption of which being stored in the records of the LMS. It needs to integrate in with virtual classroom tools, with e-commerce systems, with payment gateways, with Salesforce.com and other ERP or CRM, customer relationship management systems, and customer service systems. So all these different software applications exist for an organization to service their customers and their channel better. And without a solid API strategy, you can't connect into these systems, or you have to spend money to have the professional services to configure these connections each and every time. So the API connection, in a lot of cases where you could just literally check a box and now you're integrated with WebEx, or now you're integrated with Adobe Connect or GoToMeeting. So API integration is key.
Hey John, sorry I popped up. I just want to let you know we have about 15 minutes left, including questions and answers, so it's going to just let you know because I know there's a few more of these. So if you can, pick up the pace, but also just make sure we leave some time for questions. We're getting some great ones already in the room. I'll leave also the chat box open for you for a little bit so that people can start getting those in there.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, it's I've never been accused of being short-winded, that's for sure. So we'll speed it up. So mobile delivery, that's the next one. As we mentioned before, they're coming in from unknown access points. So the LMS needs to be responsive. It needs to be so that you're not squinting or scrolling. The content needs to be developed so that you can consume it on an iPad or on a smartphone. Traditional LMSs have a real hard time with that. So if your internal LMS is an LMS that you bought and installed 5 or 7 years ago, it's not going to be responsive. The LMS will either look teeny on the browser or it won't work at all. There's also, in addition to being responsive, is to have the mobile delivery through apps, downloadable web apps or iTunes apps or Android apps that also bring the learning or reports or on-the-job checklists or performance support right to your mobile device when you're going. So in studies, internal employees almost exclusively use their laptops or their desktops to access training, but channel users almost exclusively use tablets and smartphones is what we found. So you have to cater to that right from day one. Mobile first in everything. Channel learners are voluntary, so reward systems are really a mandatory feature, in my opinion, to be able to engage and to run marketing programs. So, for example, you're rolling out this new product, and with this new product, you have your 1,800 channel salespeople, like Broan was talking about, so that you set up a program where you allow points to be earned for the completion of the course, or you say that the first 25 channel partners that complete the course get this particular prize. So that gamification, that tracking of points or progress towards a common goal can then be rewarded. And so good systems have average gamification systems give you awards and points and badges and all that nice stuff if you're a kid playing Xbox perhaps, but I think where the rubber meets the road is when you actually get the reward. Somebody sends you a Visa gift card or a Sears card or any of the ones displayed here. And so good learning management systems are integrated in with this reward system and facilitate competition and motivation. It's got to have dynamic grouping, and dynamic grouping is the ability to create groups of users. This is why, from that integration standpoint, so that we know and continue to know more and more about the users. So not just who they are and what job they have or what location they are, but content that they've consumed previously, assessments that they've passed and failed, complementary products that they may have. But the more that you track from a user, and you can do this with good LMSs and good CRM systems, it allows you to create these dynamic groups that you can use for reporting purposes, for the assignment of content. For example, you only want channel partners who have been on the job less than a year, who haven't passed a certification but are authorized to sell the Ultra product, and create a group like that and drive targeted learning or targeted messaging out to them. It's very powerful. It happens every day in our lives. You don't even know it. All the promotional emails that you get, you're being dynamically grouped in some kind of marketing system, but you got to take that same type of technology and bring that over to the learning management system to assign or recommended content. It also is the basis for foundation of your business case by looking at subsections of your audience and making assumptions. It's got to have e-commerce, and that could be B2B e-commerce, business to business, which means that you can buy a bunch of seats to content for all your channel employees, for example, by access to 50 different courses, for example, or 50 different seats in an LMS. You got to support bulk purchases and to create credit and debit accounts to make it easy for your channel partners, employees to take and consume training. But you also have to have the business to consumer type functionality so that you can upsell individual users of the content, and shopping carts and checkouts and discount codes and things like that are all key features. There's the reporting feature because without the reports, you can't prove the business case, can't get the data out. You might as well not start in the first place. So the stronger the reporting, the better. And what's stronger? It means that you can report on anything. LMS completion data, but sortable by any user group or location or custom fields or dynamic groups, and combine these with the other available business reports. So if you say, I want to see all the channel partners that signed up in the last 6 months and whether they completed this certification and not this certification, and then I want to overlay that with the actual sales reports to see did they actually increase. And that's how you get to that 473 or that 23% number, is by going through that particular process. Blended learning paths. So not just giving just one course and a test, so you can do that, make it that simple, but to create paths or programs that have sales and marketing and product all kind of wrapped in, but each of those individual components can be used in other programs so that you can create once and mix and match your content depending on the type of channel employee that you have. And then finally, got to have the ability for certification management. That's issuing credits and certifications and points, and a lot of times that's wrapped with time. You're certified for 12 months or for 24 months, and then you have to take another so many credits. So the whole ability to manage that certification program, send out the notifications, and run the reports is all key. So as we're sliding here into home base and some questions, the last part of it, the first part was assemble the sales and marketing. The second step was to get that LMS, whether that's your internal employee or go out and look for the appropriate cloud LMS. And the third piece is to create that measurable business case. And by this point, I already let the cat out of the bag on how that's done. But it is, what is the cost of an LMS, either to expand your internal LMS or to buy a new one. Now look at channel partner data. As I said, compare that, overlay that with LMS completion data. Make predictions on what your next program, your next channel learning or product rollout is going to do in terms of sales, and then measure that reality after the fact. Did it impact it the way that you thought? And what happens, and start to make other predictions then. What would happen if 50% of our channel partners took it? 75? What if we got all 100% of our channel partners? What would that do to the business? And then strive to reach those different thresholds through evaluating your work and making better, making your content and your programs better. So you revise that content and the process, and you make it better. Here we are just in time for questions, uncharacteristically, but probably with Sarah's prodding the only way. The conclusion, if you don't train your external channel, somebody else will. Channel partners are uncaptured, or many of them are non-captured. They have lots of products that they can sell at their disposal. At the end of the day, they don't care which one they sell. They want to sell. They're salespeople. They want to be able to have the easiest sale. So if you're the organization that gives them the knowledge, the tools, the processes, the training so that they can do it easier, you're going to be on the top of their mind in the heat of the sales moment. And it's as simple as that. Certification is the foundation of measuring impact. Training is not enough alone. You have to measure. And to launch a certification program, you just need the sales content, the LMS, that measurable business case, and no channel LMS is for everyone. You have to take the time to find yours by documenting your requirements and understanding definitively who your audience group is so that you can choose the right LMS and the right content and the right measurable business case. So there you have it. Thank you.
Well done, John. I'm going to change the room on us a little bit. So Kelly, go ahead and turn on your camera. I'll turn mine on too for just a moment. I don't really need to have mine on, but I want to take us into the discussion room so that we can tackle some of these questions that came in. They just started coming in the last few minutes. So John, we have about 5 minutes. Kelly, definitely step in when it's you that would be the one to answer. One of the questions that came in is, how do organizations charge or not charge for channel certification? What is the best model?
I'll go ahead and take that one. The way that you charge, what we see is the freemium model. That's freemium, kind of like premium, but with a free. And what that means is that there's layers of content that are free and available to any channel partners, and then there's premium content that you have to pay for at different levels. And so when we see organizations charge for certification, actually generate revenue from it, they follow that model of different tiers of content available for different price levels. And we also see it tied into channel performance, that organizations want to incent their channel providers to take this content and to sell more, of course. And so there's also the influence of pricing of the certifications or the different tiered certifications based on the performance of the organization. And so I think the best model is to do exactly that. Get a base level of training out there without charging so that you can try to maximize your impact, but then provide those higher tiers where you can then turn it into a revenue generation machine.
Okay, great. Gosh, John, you're really good at covering all this. One of the questions that came in also, and I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to answer it, is it better to create your assessments in an authoring tool or to use the LMS vendor's assessment engine? Because, you know, you have both options. It probably depends on the LMS, right?
Yeah. Well,
Kelly?
so I'll field that one. And, you know, my suggestion, frankly, is if your LMS has a built-in assessment tool, I would highly recommend using that. And the reason why is because if you were to embed, for instance, your assessments in a SCORM file or in a PowerPoint, you're not going to be able to get all of the metrics and the measurements that you need that you would be provided with utilizing a built-in assessment tool. So with an assessment tool, you're going to get both a granular reports as well as aggregate reporting. So that would be my best suggestion.
Okay, John, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, great. The other question, well, Christine had asked if BlueVolt has an API integration, and thank you, Kelly, for confirming that it does. And then also, this seems like a great question from Bill, is I noticed you did discuss social learning much. Is that an important factor when it comes to channel learning, the social?
Yeah, that's a good question. Arguably, social learning could be on that list, but then you have to take one of the other 10 off, and I just didn't think it was top 10. I'm somewhat of a skeptic when it comes to social learning. I believe that people learn socially and that you learn by observing and modeling behaviors, which is the core of social learning. What I have a hard time figuring out is the actual business impact. And maybe that's my bias, that everything I talk about and think about in terms of extended enterprise learning has to have an impact to the business. And I've had a hard time drawing a definitive line to deploying and maintaining social communities for the channel. Though I've seen it done effectively, it's not easy. There has to be new content all the time. You have to encourage your people to come even more to have value. And so it's not an easy step. So almost nobody does it from a first-time standpoint. It's something that you fold into your program after you've been successful for a while, in my experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that and echo that sentiment. I think a lot of people may ask for it or think that they want it, but don't really understand how to utilize it. And so I've found it to be a bit less impactful when it comes to training your channel and channel certification programs in particular.
I think it's all about getting funding. It's all about getting the program out of the clouds or out of the thought clouds and into reality. And so I recommend biting off what you can chew and prove first and then expanding from there.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, you guys, you piled in a lot in 1 hour and such a great training. Thank you both, Kelly and John, for being here today. I want to remind everyone that I'm sure all of you have colleagues that will benefit from this too. So the same link that led you here to the live event will also lead you to the archive. Hopefully by tomorrow. We're working hard to expedite that. So please do send this out to people. We will send another invitation that you could also share with people probably to let them know. So we will leave this recording up because there is so much to learn from it. Thank you, John and Kelly. Anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
Thanks for sticking with us for the hour, and please reach out if you have any questions. Kelly and I would be glad to help you out.
Absolutely.
Thank you both. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you at the next one. Bye-bye.
Thanks.